The God of War franchise is a brutal, mythologically inspired, hack-and-slash PlayStation exclusive developed by Sony Santa Monica Studio that premiered in 2005 for the PlayStation 2. It was famous for its spectacular action and violent depiction of Greek mythology. The franchise produced multiple games throughout 2 console generations, with a handful of them appearing on the PlayStation Portable, and even one on the mobile platform, God of War Betrayal. Each big console release took the franchise a huge step further than the last until it no longer could, as was evident in the unanimously forgotten God of War Ascension. Since then, no one expected to ever see Kratos again, especially after literally wiping out the entire Greek pantheon. But then, in 2018, he came back with an entirely new mythology. But there was one big major thing that completely ruined his character history. He was a dad. Again. A dad who didn't kill his child like the old Kratos. It's preposterous that the new God of War games task players with raising a baby God of War. Old-time fans of God of War played it for the frenzy, brawling gore action that made people concerned about video game violence. Kratos chained Prometheus, then threw him into a fire and watched the flesh boil off his body. You had to separate Hermes' legs, allowing the god's messenger to crawl out oozing blood on the floor. You bashed Hercules' face in, the skin gradually turning to a pulp around his teeth. You killed Poseidon from Poseidon's point of view in the series' most horrific creation, finally hitting 2 thumb buttons on the controller to gouge out his eyes. You then hurled him down a cliff just for good measure. All of this was done to emphasize Kratos' rage, which was his one and only distinguishing feature. God of War was always the most puerile, powerful, and imaginative in the big pantheon of puerile video game power fantasies. Kratos was a huge goated fighter covered in tribal tattoos, tearing the jaws off Greek mythological beings. But the God of War games bravely changed this. Rather than creating a whole new Kratos, the same one from the previous games returns. Plagued by his horrific history and struggling to raise a doe-eyed, faux-hawked kid. He has abandoned his life of incredible mutilation and womanizing in favor of a peaceful existence in the woods. He now has a longer beard, so you know it's genuine. The typical father story has a predetermined premise. A powerful warrior with a terrible background who must learn to love something on his own. By the conclusion of their adventure, they've enjoyed some beautiful moments with their child, whether blood-related or discovered, and have decided to go to any length to safeguard them. While these stories can be moving and amusing, they also have dark undertones. These stories frequently include people who are overprotective of those close to them, yet explain their actions by claiming that they're motivated by love. This is stupidity of the sort that only millennia of evolution can inspire. But this has been popularized because a wave of games like Telltale's The Walking Dead, BioShock Infinite, and The Last of Us all conspired to treat fatherhood more seriously, creating real emotional stakes in the act of not just protecting a younger, often female companion, but of getting to know and understand them too. The reasoning for this is not difficult to understand. People who create and play video games are getting older and having children, and they too want to talk about and see things about fathers. It was only natural for a slew of dad games to emerge, following self-identified gamers to identify with huge axe-wielding fathers. The game starts with the mother's death, which sets off a series of events that leads Kratos and his son Atreus off to do some family murdering. Many prior dad games turned your offsprings into helpless tiny agents of frustration that required continuous supervision. Others turned them into invincible wisecracking fighting aids. God of War devotes a whole button to Atreus, press square to father, and transforms the boy's long maturation as a warrior into one of the game's main themes. He progressively gains strength, bravery, and usefulness. Kratos, on the other hand, is precisely the type of father you'd expect: harsh, loveless, and occasionally unwillingly protective or sensitive to his kid. You form a relationship over time based on his common skill set. Atreus goes through puberty, becoming cocksure and defiant, and finally maturing into a young man. Kratos overcomes his heinous background and becomes a father figure. We, who spent our adolescence ripping Helios's head off and seeing enslaved women purring at Kratos' feet, couldn't relate to this. The new God of War Ragnarok depicts the fight between Odin and Tyr's mindsets. Odin is associated with a closed hierarchical society, whereas Tyr is associated with language, foreign cultures, and exploration. It's no coincidence that Atreus excels at the latter abilities, decoding runes for his father and showing a genuine interest in history and travel. In a rare moment of empathy, Kratos bids his kid swear to be better than him, stating as clearly as possible every father's basic goal for his son. It might also be the game talking to itself, a series' serious desire for a sequel, which seems likely because it's a massive success. Why? Because it was a great game and so was the last one. But this isn't what we asked for. Cory Barlog, the director of God of War, is a dad himself. So what did he do? He decided to inflict his experiences on the game. The God of War design team is firmly on one side of the fence. This isn't a new God of War, but rather the old one learning to live in a new world. One who has digested the teachings of the previous decade and is out to pave the way for a new sort of action hero, and therefore a new type of boy. Whether you like it or not, this is poor and lazy development. Kratos is a depiction of sorrow, a video game as an apology for video games, even if he hasn't changed it all that much. Rather than the all-out rage of previous parts, he's here with a regretful American manhood. In other words, it isn't groundbreaking, but disgusting. It is trying to tell us that we don't have to be perfect, our children can be. When you have a child, you remain the same scumbag you were before they were born. You simply decide not to be a bad father and then figure it out as you go. The game extracts some reflection from the facts that Kratos' father, you may know him as Zeus, was so shady that Kratos had to murder him, which he did with trademark relish. It's stating, in the game's customary over-the-top style, that there's reason to hope here. The game pushes back and forth between Atreus showing his quips and Kratos lecturing him and telling him to obey. And when he doesn't listen, we have to go around solving his problems and mistakes. What do you think the old Kratos from Greece would have done in situations like these? The role of Kratos as a dad sort of ends when Atreus leaves his father, after all he did for him to be with a girl. But by that time, the game ends. All we hope from the next game is that Kratos is alone or Atreus is grown up and doesn't need constant care and lessons. How good would that be? Let us know your thoughts down below. See you next time. Till then, stay mythically mad.